What's up, everybody, and welcome to a very special quarantine edition of the HPJP Show. I'm one of your hosts, Josh, aka HexxedPhenom, aka the Sony Jabroni, and I'm joined digitally by my co-host, the abstract rocker, JP. JP, what's going on?
Oh man, it's going, man. We're living that dream. It sucks it's indoors, but at least I'm an introvert, so it's all a normal way of life.
Introverts unite, but not actually, because we have to social distance.
We have to social distance,
and we're also introverted, so we don't really want to unite, anyways.
Exactly. So I'm just kind of chilling and living my best pandemic life, and just being a lazy bum and an introvert. And I'm getting paid for it, so I will definitely not complain about that. How's it been going for you, man?
Well, I'm considered essential, so I've been mostly working, but trying to, while I'm at work, trying to keep my hands clean, trying to not touch my face, trying to take the precautions that I can to keep myself safe. But I'm working in a grocery store. I work in the dairy department, so for the past 2 weeks we've been getting hit hard, but things are starting to finally calm down now, mostly because our county is now in a stay-at-home order, so there's not many people coming in buying up a ton of stuff. We've also been limiting how much of things people can buy. Pretty much any essential products are limited to only 2 per person, per household, per day, or whatever the hell it is.
I'm sure people are still gonna, for example, they'll probably bring in it'll be parents, and they'll bring in their 3 kids to buy 2 each, but at least you guys have limited it, because people are being assholes hard and everything. So
I know the rest of the store isn't faring as well as the dairy department is right now, but thankfully we're mostly back on track in dairy, with the exception of a couple of different types of eggs and some of the juices. But other than that, we're doing all right.
I'll just come in and buy all the eggs. JP, what are you doing?
No, we're limited on eggs. Well, see, the thing is there's signs on all these things that they're limiting, but I don't think people at the registers are actually going to do anything about it. You know what I mean? If you come up with 4 gallons of milk, I don't think they're actually going to say anything to you, which is kind of dumb. It just kind of goes against the purpose. But
I'll put the theory to the test.
But other than that, I don't know. Like I said, it was crazy for 2 weeks there, but the last day or two hasn't been too bad.
Well, if they put a limit on Lunchables, you betcha I'll test that theory.
I think I don't know every single product it's on, but as far as I know, it's toilet paper, paper towels,
eggs,
Lysol
milk,
and cleaning products.
bread.
Yeah, eggs, milk, bread. Those are the main things I can think of. But hand sanitizers and soaps, I think, are the same.
I was about to say, how about that hand sanitizer? How are we looking on Purell? What about Germex? Crazy stuff.
Yeah. And then I don't know. I don't want to have a rant, but I just love how people are still being picky in a quarantine, pandemic, whatever. People are oh, I don't like this brand of eggs. And I'm lady, I don't know what you want me to do. We don't have the one you like. Or well, I think I was telling you this story. I was talking to you and Tyler when we played World War II. I think I was telling you guys this story. But this lady came in the other day, and she's we have obviously a 2 limit, a limit of 2 on eggs. And she's so I can only get 2 dozen eggs. And I'm well, technically you can get 2 of whatever quantity you want.
You got two dozen eggs.
So you can get so you can get 2 18 counts or 2 30 counts or whatever the hell you want. And she's so I can get 2 18s. And I was yeah. I was if you want. And she's but I don't like these eggs. And I'm sorry? I don't know why these eggs are so different than the ones that you like.
I mean, last I checked, eggs are fucking eggs, and bread is fucking bread.
Yeah, eggs and milk are the 2 things that I really don't understand the logic between, brand loyalty to those things. I'm I can guarantee you the only difference between a Giant brand egg and an Eggland's Best brand egg is just that the Eggland's Best eggs has those stupid EB stamp on them for some reason. But I was other than that, that's literally the only difference. But this lady's like, no, I want the Eggland's Best. Don't you have the Eggland's Best 18? I'm like, no. And she's like, well, why not? And then eventually this lady was just being mean. So I'm like, well, excuse me, miss. I was like, but you're not abiding by our social distancing rules, so I'm gonna have to ask you to stand back, please.
It's like, here's a megaphone. I'll be in the back room hearing what you say to me.
Yeah, I was like, she was basically asking me, like, she's like, well, how do you know they're not back there? I was like, I've been here for like 8 hours. I was like, that day we literally didn't have any eggs in the back room. Like, the back room was wiped clean of almost everything. And I'm like, it's lady, we don't have any eggs.
Ma'am, I've been on the front lines for 8 hours, 5 minutes, and 10 seconds. I think I'd know if we had eggs in the back.
Yeah, but contrary to popular belief, this isn't a podcast about eggs. Today, we're going to be talking about Xbox Series X versus PS5. About a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ish now, we got pretty much the full spec list for both consoles. So we're going to go through it, talk about some of the other things they talked about, some of the little features that they mentioned. And we're just going to compare and contrast them, talk about it. Why not?
Right, we're going to talk about it.
So we'll just start with the Xbox Series X here. Microsoft details full Xbox Series X specs. This is an article over at Polygon, and as soon as my phone decides to load, we will start reading it.
You know, Polygon is like the MVP, man. Polygon is where I get all my articles from.
Yeah,
Polygon is real MVP.
That's where I go for like 95% of my gaming news. The odd Kotaku article is pretty good every now and then. Jason Schreier at Kotaku is always doing God's work too. But Microsoft revealed full specs for its next generation console, the Xbox Series X, on Monday morning. This came out March 16th. In a letter to fans, Xbox head Phil Spencer detailed the Xbox Series X's custom processor that's said to be, quote, 4 times the processing power of an Xbox One, allowing developers to use 12 teraflops of GPU performance, quote, that twice that of an Xbox One X and more than 8 times the original Xbox One. He also outlined the console's variable rate shading and, quote, hardware accelerated DirectX ray tracing, as well as details on how Xbox Series X will reduce load times, quote, more playing and less waiting. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to try to put some of this stuff in layman's terms as much as we can. So the CPU, we've got 8 cores at 3.8 gigahertz, and it will go down to 3.66 gigahertz if you use multi-threading. It's a custom Zen 2 processor. There's not much I can put into layman's terms there. The CPU is the brain of the computer, as they say. All you really need to know is it's fast, and it's got 8 cores, which is pretty much standard for PCs nowadays.
Yeah, so basically, we're looking at computers at this point, which is kind of cool. I think every generation we kind of had a little bit of computer work in it, but
it's gotten closer and closer to just basically being a PC with just a custom operating system is really what we're looking at now.
Supercomputer. So ready.
So we've got the GPU, we've got 12 teraflops, 52 compute units at 1.825 gigahertz, custom RDNA 2 GPU. So basically, the RDNA 2 architecture is more efficient than RDNA 1, and then I don't remember what the name of the architecture that the PS4 and Xbox One runs off of, but I think it's something like 50 or 60% more efficient. So basically you're getting like basically what it means is the teraflop number isn't the whole story. That's just one like portion of the GPU's power conduction or whatever. Yeah. So let's see. For memory, we've got 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory with a 320 megabit bus. The memory bandwidth is 10 gigabytes of the memory will run at 560 gigabytes a second, and 6 gigabytes...
I'll be right back. You can keep going, though.
All right.
I'll be right back.
So then we got 6 gigabytes at 336 gigabytes per second. They detail also, I'm sure it'll say in one of these articles somewhere, they detailed how... how the console splits up the memory usage. That 10 gigabytes running at 560 gigabytes a second is allotted all to games, and then I believe 3.5 of that 6 gigabytes at the slower speed is for background processes, I think, for like keeping like games stored for quick resume, I think, and then 2.5 is just for the operating system, something like that. Or maybe those numbers are swapped around, I don't really remember, but it's something like that. For internal storage, we've got a 1 terabyte custom NVMe solid state drive. For I/O throughput, which basically means how fast the hard drive is, we have 2.4 gigabytes a second raw, which basically means raw data, not anything uncompressed, which most games are going to be compressed. And then compressed, we have 4.8 gigabytes a second with custom hardware decompression block. So significantly faster than anything we've seen on current gen, basically.
I'm back.
We were just talking about the I/O throughput, JP, you know?
Yeah. We getting into it now.
So, yeah, basically, the SSD is significantly faster than anything we've seen on, compared to current gen. I mean, the current gen hard drives are like 50, just to put it into perspective, current gen hard drives are 50 to 100 megabytes per second, whereas these are 2.5 to 4.8 gigabytes per second. So that's a huge jump. Increase. That's like 10 times the speed.
10 times? Yeah, it's going to be something with these next gen consoles, no doubts on
that. For expandable storage, we have 1 terabyte expansion cards that will match the internal storage exactly. We'll get into it in a different article, but there's a port on the back of the Xbox One. You can buy these like little memory card things that you shove in the back of the console as like an external hard drive. But as far as we know, those are the only ones right now that are going to work with the Xbox One X, or Series X, excuse me. Details, we've got USB 3.2 external hard drive support. You won't be able to run games off of that. You'll have to transfer them to the SSD to run them, I believe. The optical drive is 4K UHD Blu-ray drive, obviously. And performance targets are looking to 60 FPS at 4K and up to 120 frames per second. So yeah, that's just the baseline specs for the Xbox Series X. Let's dive a little bit deeper though. Let's talk about those expandable storage cards for a second, if my phone will load again.
I just think it's interesting how the Xbox Series X is a box. It's literally a box with vents on top, which is interesting to me. That design is very, very interesting. I'm wondering what the PS5 is actually going to wholeheartedly look like.
Yeah. Well, the Xbox Series X, they basically said the reason they built it that way is because they wanted to make it as quiet or quieter than the Xbox One X, which, as far as I know, is already really quiet. And so they wanted to go with the least amount of fans as possible, but also they don't want the thing to overheat. So they said that the way that it's built is actually like it's so much more effective that way for cooling reasons that they just have one giant fan on the top that exhausts all the air out the top. And there's just those, like, the grates on the very bottom and the grate on the very top where the fan spits all the hot air out. So from an engineering standpoint, it is actually really good for cooling. Because, I mean, obviously heat rises, so that makes sense.
The only downside is if you have it, like, at my house, if I put it in my entertainment center, it'd be blowing hot air and wood and coming back down onto it. But, yeah, that's the only downside.
Yeah, I mean, you can turn it sideways. Like, you can sit it sideways like a regular console, and it'll be coming out the side. But
as long as you sit it sideways, yeah, that's not bad at all.
But, yeah, so Xbox Series X will have expandable storage through custom 1 terabyte cards. Seagate and Microsoft team up for a proprietary storage solution.
That's interesting.
Microsoft detailed the full Xbox Series X hardware specs on Monday, confirming the nuts and bolts for the next-gen CPU, GPU, RAM, internal storage, the latter of which is a 1 terabyte custom NVMe solid-state drive, the drive that will enable fast loading times but it also presents an issue. 1 terabyte isn't much storage these days, especially as current generation games balloon well beyond 100 gigabytes. Microsoft's answer to that is the Xbox Series X storage expansion card, a proprietary hardware solution being developed with Seagate. According to Seagate, those 1 terabyte expansion cards will replicate, quote, the full speed and performance of the Xbox Series X's internal storage. Wow. The back of the Series X has a port dedicated to these storage expansion cards, but the Series X will also accept external USB hard drives. Series X games can be installed to a USB drive, but users must install them to the console's internal or storage expansion SSDs to play them. This also applies for Xbox One games that get, quote, optimized for Series X updates, such as Gears 5. Microsoft says those enhanced games can't be played off a USB drive if users want optimal performance.
Wow.
Neither Seagate nor Microsoft revealed specifications on the Xbox Series X storage expansion cards other than to say that its performance matches internal storage exactly. The companies also did not disclose price for the storage expansion cards, and we should note that a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD costs around $100 or more, pointing to a potentially expensive storage expansion card.
Yeah, at that rate, you might as well just buy a new solid state drive.
Well, the thing is, as far as we can tell, you might not be able to just throw any. As far as we can tell, you can't just throw any regular SSD in there. Like, it has to be this expansion card or nothing.
Oh, that really sucks. Wow. Damn.
As far as we know, they could change something, or they could have just maybe be messaging it wrong, but as far as we know, this is the only way to expand your storage on the Xbox One. Or Xbox Series X, excuse me.
I was to see either that, or eventually maybe they might do like what the USB like drives. Maybe they'll just do something like that where you can plug it in and it's like, I don't know. They did it for the PS4. You could have it sitting there and it's extra memory, but will it work the same? That's the downside.
Well, like they said, you can use an external hard drive to store your games, but when you want to play those games, you still have to transfer them over to the SSD anyways. So I mean,
wow.
I feel like it almost defeats the purpose of just having a regular external hard drive anyways, because I don't know. I don't see a point if you have to transfer from the hard drive to the SSD when you might as well just wait until you want to play a game and then just download it right to the SSD. It would probably honestly be faster that way, depending on your internet speed. But
so basically, there's already struggles from a mile away, but I'm sure it's going to be like that for the PlayStation 5 as well in some kind of retrospect. But yeah, I heard the new consoles. What are they launching with? Like, is it 850 gigs on the hard drive, the solid state? Is that confirmed?
Xbox is 1 terabyte. PS5 we'll get into in a little bit.
Okay. Oh, okay. As I was hearing numbers. All right, cool.
So we're still talking about Xbox Series X. Xbox Series X tech demos show off fast load times, multi-game quick resume. Microsoft fully revealed the hardware specs for its Xbox Series X on Monday, but it's a pair of new tech demo videos that showcases what some of that speed will mean for the next generation. In one video, Microsoft shows off shortened load times enabled by the Xbox Series X solid-state drive. A 1 terabyte custom NVMe, according to Microsoft, a side-by-side load of State of Decay 2 illustrates that on Xbox One X, it takes about 52 seconds to load the open-world game from its menu. On Xbox Series X, that load time is slashed to about 10 seconds. So you're looking at 5 times faster on State of Decay 2, which also, to be blunt, that game, I mean, to be fair, I'm not 100% sure, but that game just in its normal state isn't built to take advantage of the SSD. So you imagine games designed specifically for that will probably have even faster loading times.
Yeah, exactly right.
But even 52 seconds down to 10 seconds or less is still incredibly impressive. But yeah, this article basically goes on to explain exactly what I did. Granted, this is a backwards compatible Xbox One title running on a Series X and does not represent optimized for Xbox Series X. It is possible that Microsoft and its developers could reduce comparable load times even further by updating games like State of Decay. Microsoft touts the Xbox Series X's so-called velocity architecture in its tech demo, which describes as the combination of custom hardware and deep software integration that will quote, enable richer and more dynamic living worlds and will, quote, effectively eliminate loading times and make fast travel systems just that, fast. Microsoft also showed off the Xbox Series X's quick resume feature, which will let players resume multiple games from save states in the video above. The demo shows a player loading games in progress from Forza Motorsport 7, Ori and the Blind Forest, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, and State of Decay 2. Again, all titles shown during the represented backwards compatible... Wait. showed during the demo represent backward compatibility Xbox One games running on Series X. So these they're like quick 30s, or well, they're quick like 1-minute videos each, just showing exactly what they said. I think the thing more impressive to me than the loading times is being able to quick resume multiple games and just pick up right where you left off. I think that'll be awesome. Really hoping PS5 has that. They've obviously said about quick resume, and I don't think they've said about multiple games, but seeing as how PS5's SSD is significantly faster, I would imagine they'd be able to do it just as fine.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I'm thinking it's probably gonna happen. So does that mean, like, in theory, so do you have to have these games on standby on the console commands to actually have quick resume, or could I, like, say if I'm like on Call of Duty and then I jump on the NASCAR and then WWE and I quit out of the game, save right where I was?
Yeah. See, it does save right where you are. I guess it doesn't. They haven't really confirmed if it's like, because like say like with the PS4, how, you know, you can either just go to the home menu and then go, like, you can keep like a game open and then open Netflix, and then
so it's just gonna be the same thing.
You know what I mean? Like, well, I don't. They haven't really said is the thing. I don't know if it's just gonna be like if you would, you know how, so like, okay, so you hold the PS button on PS4 and you can close application from there and it just completely closes it and then that's it. I don't know if it's just going to be like that, like if you, like, closing the application is still going to leave it in a save state, or if you would just like go to the home menu and then without closing the application just pick a new game and that's how you keep it in a save state. They haven't said, because basically all this Xbox demo was it was just like, it was like, okay, we're on Forza, and then the person held the Xbox button or whatever, and then just picked another game, and then they did that like 3 or 4 times.
So it's probably gonna look like that menu, of that drop menu, jump in and out of. Oh, okay, I got you.
Which, I mean, I don't know. Either way, I'm excited to see how well it works, but yeah, that's gonna be awesome, especially for switching between single player games and stuff like that. But. Let's keep on keeping on. Let's see what this article has to say about Xbox Series X. Microsoft details changes for the Xbox Series X wireless controller. There's not that many changes, but so this one will be quick. The console is expected to be released holiday 2020, and with it, players will get a new controller, which is said to be an improved version of the Xbox One controller, in, quote, smart revolutionary ways. Microsoft outlined the controller's details in an interview with Xbox senior designer Ryan Whitaker. Whitaker said the team designed the new controller with inclusivity in mind. Quote, improved ergonomics for a wider range of people, better cross-device connectivity, easier sharing, and reduced latency. The new controller should fit more hands, especially smaller hands, Whitaker says. Bumpers have been rounded, triggers reduced, and grips sculpted for better accessibility. The new D-pad 2 is designed with the intent to boost performance and accessibility. When looking at the wide range of game genres and personal playstyles today, the D-pad is used in a lot of different ways, Whitaker said. A slightly deeper dish gives your thumb a nice little home to sit in. The angles are fine-tuned to give you a good amount of leverage with minimal momentum. Likewise, the new controller will work with Xbox One too, but also with PC, Android, and iOS. It'll, quote, remember devices to make switching between easier, Microsoft said. A USB-C port is available for charging and playing. Microsoft also shared more information about the new controller's share button, announced in December, which is placed right below the big ol' Xbox button. It'll be used to take screenshots and record videos without opening menus. Then you can easily access and share with your social media platforms directly with your friends. So, minor changes. A D-pad, slightly shifted grips and triggers to make it more ergonomic. Standard stuff, I'd say. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly right. You're just gonna keep improving it and make it better than it was. So that's always a good approach for it.
Xbox has basically had the same controller design since they started. I mean, the original Xbox controller, the Duke, that was like ginormous, was pretty weird. But then after that, they've been pretty much all the same for the most part.
Yeah, they've been exactly the same. Because I mean, I remember the original Xbox controller was ridiculous. But then when you got into the 360, it was like, okay, this is more manageable. Okay, this is actually cool. All right.
Yeah. All right, so now moving on, we're going to talk about the PlayStation 5. And then at the end, we're going to do a little comparison side by side and talk a little bit. So, PS5 hardware specs revealed. Sony finally dropped some key PS5 details. I'm going to take a sip of water first. Let's go. You already know I'm hyped for this. I'm the Sony jabroni. Let's get into it.
He's fucking hyped.
Even though this stuff came out like a week or two ago, and I already know all of it. Okay. So. So on Wednesday, technical presentation by Mark Cerny, lead system architect for both the PS4 and PS5. The live stream was accompanied by an in-depth Digital Foundry piece based on an interview with Cerny, and Sony published the hardware specifications on the PlayStation blog. A lot of people, this is my own thing, but a lot of people were disappointed by this Mark Cerny presentation, but a lot of people don't seem to realize that it was supposed to be a talk at GDC for game developers.
Yeah.
Because GDC was supposed to be last week or 2 weeks ago or whatever it was. And so people were like, this is dry. Why is he just saying all this like technical shit? Why aren't they showing games? Why aren't they talking games? Why didn't they show the console? It was literally just to tell developers that didn't already have dev kits what PS5 is capable of and what they could be getting their hands on with soon when more dev kits are available.
I know, right? Everyone jumped the gun and they were like, well, this is a boring presentation. It's like, did you guys think that it wasn't supposed to go down like this? But of course, no one thinks.
95, like there's probably a 90% chance it wouldn't have even been live streamed had GDC actually happened. It would have just been like a behind closed doors talk to some devs, you know what I mean?
Oh, it would have been.
So, I don't know. Regardless, I thought a lot of it was interesting. I mean, this thing stacks up pretty damn well against the Xbox Series X, so let's get into it. Cerny said the CPU will feature 8... Oh, wait, is there just a... Okay, yeah, there's just a list I can read off of. Okay. So let's get into it. CPU. We've got 8 AMD Ryzen Zen 2 cores, 16 threads, so just like the Xbox Series X. Variable frequency at up to 3.5 gigahertz, so a little bit slower than the Xbox Series X processor. The GPU, we've got AMD Radeon RDNA 2 based graphics engine with hardware accelerated ray tracing, so basically the same thing as the Xbox Series X. For the GPU itself, we have 36 compute units compared to 52 on the Xbox Series X at a variable frequency of up to 2.23 gigahertz, which comes out to 10.28 teraflops. So basically what this boils down to, in layman's terms, is the Xbox Series X's GPU has more potential raw power at 12 teraflops, but the PS5's GPU is faster. So it's power versus speed, basically. Yeah, it's a trade-off. Realistically, I mean, we'll have to see, we'll have to wait for games to come out and see how it stacks up. But I would argue there's going to be...
Honestly,
maybe, it's going to be pretty damn close.
Well, to tell you the truth, like no matter what the specs look like, you already know there's a midway point for game developers. So even though the Xbox One might have advantages on one end and the PS5 has it on others, you're not going to particularly notice that because game developers are probably going to have that midway both consoles.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like apples to oranges. That's the easiest way to compare it.
I think if there is any significant difference in performance, I think it's at least going to be a lot closer than it was between when the PS4 and Xbox One first launched. Because if you remember, the original Xbox One, a lot of games were running at 720p or 900p instead of 1080p. I don't know if you remember that, but
I do remember that. I do. Yeah, it was just, in the end, it's like, hey, the consoles could have whatever power they want, but, if you're going to put out a game for both consoles, you kind of have to, have a midway of development. You can't be all right, well, here's this, and here's another version for that.
Well, that's how game development is. You always have to take into account the lowest common denominator, which is...
Exactly, right.
Which is why now, most games... Well, pretty much all games are going to be okay... We're just making this with an SSD in mind, and sure, for PC players that don't have an SSD, this might suck, but the console versions, they both have SSDs standard, so you don't have to build your game to work on a hard drive, which is nice. But
exactly.
Let's keep going. For memory, we've got 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 on a 256 megabit bus. We've got the memory bandwidth. All 16 gigs is running at 448 gigabytes a second. So it's like in between the two speeds that Xbox has. GP, you weren't here for it, but basically they segmented off the memory for the Xbox Series X. So 10 gigabytes, which is all allocated to just games, runs at, I think, 500 and something gigabytes a second. And then 6, which is allocated for the OS and for, I think, keeping those save states just sitting in the background. That's a little bit slower. I think it runs at like 380 something megabits per second, or gigabytes per second. But yeah, so all 16 gigs on the PS4 is running at 448, so in the middle somewhere. For internal storage, this is where you were saying about the 825 gigabyte thing. We've got a custom 825 gigabyte SSD for the internal storage. The I/O throughput for the PlayStation 5, 5.5 gigabytes per second read, and that's uncompressed. Raw data. And then the typical is 8 to 9 gigabytes per second compressed data. So we're talking almost double the speed of the Xbox Series X's SSD.
Yeah, I was going to say, I had a feeling, because I was reading a few specs about it. I didn't really look too much into it because I had a feeling we'd be doing the podcast about it.
Yeah.
But from what I did see, I did see a few of the key points from each console, and yeah, that was where I saw the PS5 was ahead in terms of the speed of that. Uncompressed, that's amazing.
I mean, games. I mean, see, I don't know. I think the SSDs could technically make it so that games don't need to be compressed or don't need to be compressed as much, but it's standard for games to get compressed at some point.
Yeah, games get compressed just because I think games are compressed.
It's easier.
Yeah,
saves space.
It's easier, and it works out for the memory of the console.
Yeah, it's to save storage.
How it's utilizing everything, so it has to be compressed in some way. It's kind of like, the best way I could describe it is it's kind of like, because I do a lot of photo shoots, it would be kind of like a photo shoot where you'll be taking a photo for this photo shoot and it'll be in RAW, and RAW could be literally it could be 10 gigabytes of photo, but when you take that RAW photo you compress it down to 3 megabytes or whatever, because that's standard, but it's less memory for who you're giving it to. So I think that's always something to think about with compression. I mean, there's always going to be compression, but I wish we just had 1 terabyte for the launch. I think, I could totally make 800 whatever gigabytes. That's no problem. It's just, you already know there's going to be that person that loads up their solid state drive, and then you have to start thinking about, where do I go? What brands work?
It's gonna be me. It's gonna be me.
There's going to be that person that will load up that shit like that within the first year or two.
Once Spider-Man 2 comes out, I'm fucked.
What do we do now? And even on the PS4, I have a 2 terabyte, and I still have 250 gigabytes left. So realistically, if we're thinking about PS5, you're going from a solid game release of 65 gigabytes to probably 100 gigabytes. So that means the standard player can only have about 8 games installed on their console without updates. And it's going to be rough.
Well, see, it's going to be interesting how they do certain things. Because, I think we'll get into it in a little bit, because I'm sure one of these articles details it somewhere.
Oh, but I'm sure.
Game files might not actually get that much bigger, because I'm sure they see, I don't know, because
we went from PS1 games being 250 megabytes on average to PS2 being 2 gigabytes, PS3 being 25 gigabytes.
Yeah, 10 to 20 at most.
And then now we're at 65 gigabytes. It makes you wonder. I think projectively, people are looking at 100 gigabytes per game installation that you pop in your console or install off of the store. So it's gonna be rough. I honestly, I think this is where compression is going to really come in, because if they can take some nods from Nintendo, I think they could really keep it to 80 gigabytes and not 100. But that really depends on how they do it, what they compress it with, what they're comfortable with. So it's all like a moving target at that point. But we're probably looking at more than 65 gigs a game base. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but like, we'll also have to see how it works out, because like I said, I don't know if any of these articles directly mention it, but I know in that presentation, Mark Cerny made a point to talk about how with regular hard drives, there is a lot of data in a game that just gets copied over and over and over again and placed in different segments on the hard drive, so that the hard drive doesn't need to seek as much to find that one particular piece of data it needs. So with an SSD, you don't need to do that. So that's potentially saving a lot of space, depending on what kind of assets and files we're talking about being copied over and over again.
Plus, like, when you go from a normal hard disk drive to a solid state drive, for the people that don't know what we're talking about, because I'm sure there are people that are confused about it, a normal hard disk drive is honestly, it's a solid piece of equipment that will essentially keep sketching over and rolling and rolling and rolling. That's why, old school computers, after a while, you have to replace the hard drives because they just get burned out from it.
Basically, yeah, the best way I can describe a hard drive is it's basically just a record player, but the needle is moving itself, looking for the different, looking for whatever data you need. So for games recently, especially because they're so big, developers are just kind of copy and pasting these assets wherever they can in the game's like files, just to make it so that when the game is trying to load a piece of data and needs specific assets, it's basically that ARM needs to move around and read and find that data and then send it off to the hard drive or send it to like the GPU and stuff to be rendered or whatever.
And essentially that is why, as you go from N64, PS1, PS2, whatever fucking console you want to compare, it's going to be quicker load times, because as technology advanced, so did the hard disk drive and how it finds the data and how it loads and renders everything in. So when you get a solid state drive, instead of it being a large piece of equipment, like a big ass thing in my hand, it's kind of like this. It's like a little tiny piece of equipment, and it's a solid piece, which is a solid state drive. But when you put it into a computer, a game console, instead of this thing tracking like a record player around playing vinyl, it's going right to the source code of the game immediately electronically and not spreading itself, which means solid state drives have a longer lifespan without burning out and without being overexhausted. So as we get into the next generation, I think it's going to be good, because if they clip out the packets of the code that they're doing, realistically, from a 65 gig base game, instead of 80, maybe they can get 70, because you just have to like constantly put whatever the game needs right there. It's not like you have to be like, hey, 1 mile down the road, hey, here's this, 1 more mile down the road, hey, here's this again. So instead of like partitioning what is happening in a game file, you can now have a solid image, as people would call it, and hopefully it definitely is quicker. And like you said, hopefully they are projectively thinking about what base games will be, because realistically 850 gigabytes or 1 terabyte, it's not much of a difference. It's literally a game and a half when you really think about it, if we're how it is right now. But hopefully through technology advancing and compression and ditching packet loss and all the crap they have to put in to keep the game going at a steady pace without, a solid state could easily replace it. I hope they're thinking about the benefits of that technology, because I loved hard disk drives, but it's so old fashioned, like solid state electronic memory where it's at now. So that's how I feel about it.
Well, I think, because we talked about it a little bit on the episode of Pizza and Pixels we just recorded. Go check it out if you haven't already. We talked about just a whole hodgepodge of gaming news that we missed. GameStop thinking that they're essential during the pandemic and all that other stuff. But we talked about how Nintendo is like the masters of compression when it comes to porting over these third-party games to Switch and having them be like a quarter of the size of the PS4 and Xbox One versions. I think the main reason for that is because they're cartridges, now that I think about it, because they don't need to copy all that data over and over again. Because there's no hard drive in the console, because
there isn't. It's all electronic.
Yeah, that's because you use an SD card is like your expandable storage, and it just has an internal an internal SD card as its hard drive. So it's loading everything on flash memory, basically.
Then, people could talk all this shit on Nintendo that they want and that they're washed up and they go back well too many times. All the classic complaints. But at the end of the day, Nintendo has been doing something since the 90s that other people haven't got, and that's the form of severe compression to take a 50 gigabyte game, as we said, and put it into 10 gigabytes on a cartridge. And instead of it being a disc format, you put it in the console, and that cartridge practically is just a drive that you put in, and it could electronically read it. And you don't have to worry about a lot of the problems that some console games could run into, where, as we were saying, it's like, as you're running every mile, you're going to see the same source code start popping through the game, so it can keep going through the library. It's pretty quick, convenient. So hopefully in the next generation, I'm sure that Xbox and Sony are going to be paying attention to what they really did with the Nintendo consoles, because for what you're really thinking about what you played, it was like, damn, we're playing like way more than what we think we have, just because they compressed this file down so far that it still works. And I'm kind of hoping that it does work, because then in that case, if you have a 1 terabyte, a 2 terabyte, whatever the hell it is, you can get the most out of your disk space, your solid state drive. You're not going to clutter your console up. So hopefully hopefully they're listening just to what people are looking at. But if there's one thing they can learn from Nintendo, I think the compression is going to be it. Yeah. So we'll see what happens, because you got a solid state drive. You don't have to worry about shredding and playing vinyls and stuff like that. So
I'm not a game developer, but I'm trying to think. There's probably a way that you could like store the data on the hard drive as compressed, and then when it gets extracted to go into the game, it decompresses a little bit. I don't know if that's a thing or not. I don't really know, but that'd be interesting to see someone try to do that.
Yeah, it really depends on, I guess, how they want to run the consoles with the software. If they could really figure it out, I think they could easily keep it at 65 gigs a game. That way you save at least 35 gigabytes per game you install. So that's not bad.
Yeah. And well, another thing that Cerny talked about was how I'm sure anybody who has a PS4 knows very well, when you download an update, and then it has to copy for like 30 minutes.
It's ironic that you say that, because that just happened to me the other night on World War II. Yeah. I downloaded the update that was only like 3.5 gigs in about, it was a very short time compared to your average user. Let's just put it that way. And him and Tyler were playing World War II, and I'm just sitting here looking at copying. Slowly copying, and I'm like, I thought the download and the installation would have been the longest part, but you have copying, and then Mark confirmed what happens when the console sees that and has to keep copying the data like the every freaking mile thing. And so that's why you have to wait forever to copy your files, if you ever wonder what the hell that was. Because I kind of came to that conclusion the other night. I'm like, well, what the hell's up with copying if it takes longer than installing and downloading? It's kind of it's an old-fashioned thing, but hopefully we don't have to worry about that in the next generation, right? With the processor and all that shit.
Cerny said that the SSD completely eliminates that, because the way he explained it was the reason that it needs to copy is because a standard hard drive can't, just because of the way it works, it can't like take that. Okay, so like you download a patch for your game. Instead of just being able to take that 2 gigabytes and just insert it into the files where it's needed, your standard hard drive needs to completely overwrite all of the data and insert that new information over top of where it already was. So it needs to, that copying is basically recopying the entire game file and just inserting those new pieces of data where it needs to be. Whereas the SSD can just in like an instant just go back and be like, oh, okay, this data got changed here it is, drop it in. So it doesn't need to copy the entire game file over again.
Yeah, it's cool knowing that it can manually just assume that, oh, hey, this line of code is here. There's some new line of code right here. Hey, we'll just shove it right in there like Tetris, and we'll keep going forward without it backtracking and, constantly trying to figure out where it's at.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep going because my phone's going to die soon. So
okay, we're about at 46 minutes. Wow.
We'll just keep going through this quick. Expandable storage, we've got an NVMe SSD expansion bay, which we'll get into a little bit later. It does support a USB hard drive, but just like the Xbox Series X, you will need to transfer it over to the SSD if you want to actually play the game. Optical drive is 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray. Video output, we have HDMI 2.1, support for 4K 120 Hz TVs, 8K TVs, variable refresh rate. And they have the Tempest 3D Audio Tech engine for audio, which I don't think we actually get into here, but yeah. So let's see. And then I don't know if you saw this, the weird way that they oh, okay, let's go with this first. PS5 won't require a proprietary solution for storage upgrades. So, during a scholarly presentation on Wednesday, PlayStation 5 lead architect Mark Cerny delivered details, specifications on the new Sony console. Much of his talk centered around the benefits of its custom-built 825GB internal solid-state drive. Hidden among all the feeds and speeds is the fact that PS5 will eventually be upgradable with off-the-shelf additional storage. Meanwhile, the Series X will require a proprietary expansion card to increase the system's storage.
It's going to be a big difference maker in the generation, because PS4, you already know you're going to be able to, I could easily buy any stock SSD that it applies, just like I got the thing you helped me with the hard disk drive. And on the Xbox, you have to buy a card, which that can be very cost efficient, depending on how you're going about it. But at the end of the day, if you need more memory, you need more memory.
Yeah.
So.
And we'll talk a little bit about, because as of right now, which I think this is kind of impressive. I mean, it also sucks knowing that we'll probably have to wait like a year or two before we can actually get drives that'll work in the PS5. But as of right now, the PS5's SSD is literally faster than any PC part you can get on the market. And they're saying that these these drives that you would get to expand your PS5 storage need to be at least as fast as the PS5's drive.
Okay, so you're going to have to look for a certain... Yeah, so it's going to be about a year until...
So it's going to be like a year or two, and even then they're saying they're not 100% sure if those drives will work all the time. So Sony's going to have like a constant updating list of drives.
So basically, no matter what console you get, it's going to be maintenance of some kind.
Well, I mean, we'll see how the pricing works out, because Xbox is doing a proprietary thing that might be more expensive than just being able to buy a regular, for all intents and purposes, regular SSD that just happens to work in the PS5. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's gonna be a very interesting time. I'll definitely be able to make it last a good year, guaranteed, probably around 2, and then I'll have to think about options.
But yeah, so let's keep reading on. The PS5, on the other hand, will have an expansion bay for an off-the-shelf M.2 NVMe SSD. That should give Sony's customers more options when it comes to upgrading their console storage. There's one big caveat, though. The PS5's expansion won't just work with any M.2 SSD. In order to ensure the performance capabilities with the high-speed SSD of the PS5, the physical compatibility with the size of the expansion bay, Sony will be certifying individual M.2 SSDs for the PS5, which uses the new PCI Express 4.0 standard. Cerny said that it's likely that certifications will begin arriving a bit past the console's launch this fall. So, again, I wouldn't go out just buying any random NVMe SSD you can get your hands on. You're going to want to wait for Sony to start
seeing what the qualifications are.
You're gonna have to wait for Sony to start approving select drives. So,
well, the good news is though, in the way that I was buying any hard disk drive to put into my console, which I went with a normal, pretty high-end brand, but I just did it for security. But at least with the PS5 now, at least they're going to put their name brand on it, and you could probably end up buying these in stock from Amazon, and it'll actually say Sony PS5 SSD. Or if you go on another one, it might say approved for the Sony PlayStation 5. It'll say it in the for the item. So it's not going to be that hard to get them. Just got to wait for the technology to develop.
Yeah.
So soon.
I think it's... I mean, granted the consoles aren't out yet, so this could easily even change by November when we get the console, but it is kind of crazy to me to see that, like, there is actually something in a console that's coming out that's beyond what PCs can do right now, which is kind of crazy to me. But
exactly right. It's getting very, very interesting with how it's advancing with consoles.
Okay, so this one is to clear up some confusion. I don't know if you read the hullabaloo about this one, but this article says most PS4 games will run on PlayStation 5, Sony clarifies.
Okay, oh yeah, so, like 100 games or something like that, the top 100.
During Sony's Road to PS5 presentation on Wednesday, lead system architect Mark Cerny said that, quote, almost all of the 100 most played PlayStation 4 games will be compatible with the next generation console at launch. That didn't inspire much confidence about the catalog, and after 2 days of uncertainty, Sony clarified the statement on Friday. Quote, we believe that the overwhelming majority of the 4,000 plus PS4 titles will be playable on PS5. The top 100 wording, that was just a snapshot of how development is going now. Sony said it expects backwards compatible games to run at a, quote, boosted frequency on the PS5, which will provide a higher or more stable frame rates and potentially higher resolutions. The company is evaluating PS4 games on a title-by-title basis to ensure compatibility with the higher frequency of the PS5's GPUs. Sony has tested hundreds of games so far and will test thousands more as the console's holiday launch approaches. More updates are expected, quote, in the months ahead. In Wednesday's presentation, Cerny explained that the PlayStation 5 includes the internal logic for PS4 and PS4 Pro systems, which makes backwards compatibility possible. He did not, however, mention PS5 backwards compatibility with older generation PlayStation games, only PS4 titles. So basically what it's saying is, to clear it up, they're saying they're hoping the majority of the 4,000 plus PlayStation 4 games will be available to play on PS5 at launch. And they're saying that in an ideal world, most, if not all, games will just be able to run on the higher frequency GPU and just be able to have a higher frame rate, higher resolutions just on their own. But they included the internal logic for the PS4 and PS4 Pro so that if those games don't work with the boosted frequency, they can just revert back to playing like the PS4 Pro version or the PS4 base version if it didn't have a Pro enhanced version.
So essentially every game playable just depends on what schematics we're talking about.
From what it sounds like, yes. And then
I'm not going to be using it for backwards.
I'm going to use it maybe for a couple of things, like right when the game launches, or I mean right when the console launches, when there's not that many games for PS5. I'll use it here and there, but like once the big games start coming out and like more games start coming out, I'm not going to be that interested in backwards compatibility. I'll a couple days after the console comes out, I'll be like, I wonder if Spider-Man runs any better. I'll turn on Spider-Man for a few minutes. Oh, this is cool. This looks better. This loads faster, has a higher frame rate, whatever it happens to be. But
Subway.
It's not going to be like, it's not like I'm buying a PS5 just to play Spider-Man and God of War on it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's mainly for people that want to catch up and buy the PS5 and go back to PS4 and PlayStation Now is going to definitely have PS1 and 2 games at that point, so it should be quite an interesting endeavor.
Yeah. So, I mean, all in all, that's all the information we have now about PS5 and Xbox Series X. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely excited for next generation as a whole. And
same here.
I don't know, like, people are being stupid on the internet, like, trying to do all this console war shit already again. I'm like, what the fuck
people
does it
already
matter,
doing
dude?
console wars. And, you know, at the end of the day, like we said, no matter what the hell the damn schematics are for the console, it doesn't matter because the games are going to produce at the same generic rate, and one console is going to be faster than another. You know, like, you know, people want to compare apples to oranges and specs to schematics, and you know, at the end of the day, they're on the same level. It's just certain ends of it are a little better than the other, but at the same time, when you think about it, they're exactly the same in different ways. And you know, now that we have cross-platform play, like we've talked about before, it's like I feel like this generation's gonna just mend the fucking fence that's been planted between the console wars the past few gens. But yeah, I think they're very impressive. They're both impressive in their own unique ways. I mean, one is a little better than the other in certain little schematics, but as a whole, I mean, they're on the same level, both supercomputers, consoles. So
yeah,
I think everyone's eventually just settle down and shut the fuck up about it. But yeah, you know, regardless, no matter what console you choose, no matter what console you want to play, it doesn't really make it any different because you could still connect with your friends from another console. And we already know they're going to prove that cross-platform playability on the next gen. So
they have to. I mean, I have a feeling that, like, we're not seeing it as much with games releasing right now because we kind of really only just recently opened the floodgates on cross-platform play. So a lot of games that are coming out now weren't really developed with that in mind because it was such a recent thing. Like Fortnite, Minecraft, Rocket League, and Call of Duty all kind of did it around the same couple month period, and that was only like the summer, basically. So once we get, I think, closer, I think it'll become a standard that every multiplayer third-party game is just going to end up being multi-platform, cross-play, cross-progression, cross-whatever. So literally the only thing it will come down to is the exclusives. Do you want Halo? Do you want Forza and all the other Microsoft stuff? Or do you want Spider-Man, Horizon, God of War, the Sony stuff? That's all it's going to come down to.
You know, and like the thing is, for me, I'm not really an exclusive console, so for me, I just see it as, hey, it's the same damn thing, just in a different. You know, if you want to buy it, play it, hell yeah, you know. Regardless, at least you can connect friends on console, and you know, it's basically like you're living life without worries. And it's not like the console wars that we lived through are in the 2000s. That honestly, for me, that's the console war era. Is the 2000s, 2010s. It got significantly better and diminished. And now here we are with the floodgates and crossplay. So. Yeah, all in all, it just comes down to whatever console you prefer and whatever console you want to game on. I mean, we're all gamers. Doesn't matter if you're on the PC, which I know PC claims the master race, but
PCMR,
and you know, regardless, we're all on the same games and crap. It just doesn't matter what the hell's in your console. It's just as long as you enjoy what you're playing, then hell yeah, and don't be an asshole about it. It's pretty simple, you know. So hopefully it gets better as the next gen goes on. I feel like it will. I don't see why it wouldn't. It'd be really stupid if it got worse.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how it can get worse after what the hell I already lived through with the console wars. So
it's just for some reason, like, just the pinnacle of stupidness to me about it is like just thinking about like playing Call of Duty on PS5 and just hearing two dudes in the lobby that are on the same team who happen to be playing on Xbox and PS5 are just like, oh yeah, my Xbox is better. Oh yeah, look. It's like, no, my PS5's better. It's like, y'all are on the same fucking team. Just shut the fuck up. Because people do that right now on Modern Warfare. I've heard people doing it. Yeah, they're like, oh, Xbox One X is better. It's like, fuck, no one cares.
Yeah,
maybe if you play the fucking objective, we'd actually win the game.
Yeah. I was about to say that. I'm like, well, maybe if they play the fucking objective, I don't think anybody would be pissing their pants over spilled milk. But, you know, and then like nowadays, you could even plug in a mouse and a keyboard. So basically,
on console. So it's literally, it's all mending together. It's all the same shit.
You know, it's all mending together and everything's coming together. Like, so next gen is I think next gen is going to be the era where everyone fucking egos plays a game.
Yeah.
I have hope. I think it's easily coming to that. You know, from the PS3 era, the PS4, I can tell you it's been significantly changed. And now in the PS4, Xbox One, you know, you see it a little bit, but it's not as prominent. So hopefully the next gen, it's everyone just gets the fuck over themselves.
Well, see, I wonder if maybe the console war is just so hard to argue this generation because PS4, no matter what argument you bring up, PS4 is like the far and away winner in terms of sales. But that's because of how badly Xbox fucked themselves in like the months leading up to the console's release. And they just couldn't recover. Like Phil Spencer has been doing a fantastic job ever since he took over. But like he got left with a fucking cesspool of just shit to deal with.
Basically, Phil Spencer got left with the console generation war that he didn't want to take his hand on. And I don't blame him because I'd look at it and be like, do I really have to fucking cater to these people that argue about consoles? And I think the first point that it broke the wall down with it was around E3 of that year. Phil Spencer was talking about how much he loves PlayStation and how he has a PlayStation and how it's okay to have PlayStation if you have an Xbox. It's not like you're cheating on anybody. So what Major Nelson was in terms beforehand, right?
No, it was the head of Xbox before Phil Spencer was I think his name was Don Matrick or something like that. He's the dude that was in all the interviews that was like, oh, if you don't like like if you can't afford the new Xbox, we've got a console for you. It's called the Xbox 360.
Okay, yeah, that.
Or the dude that was like, oh, or like that Angry Joe interview where they're like, oh, well, you know, there's the military like stationed overseas. They don't have access to internet connection. They're like, oh, we got a console for them too. It's called the Xbox 360. I was
dude,
like, fuck
literally,
you guys,
like
that was so horrible.
That was so horrible. I remember watching that video Angry Joe put up, and after that video played, he was just staring blankly at the screen. He's like, "What the fuck did you just tell me?" He just completely shit on Xbox along with the paywall. Dude, and
I remember that like series of like 5 videos that he did just
it was like 5 fucking videos, and I mean, I don't really, I'm not a console war guy, so I just look at it and be like, wow, these people are idiots arguing about it. But like, dude, when he like shit on the military and like Angry Joe interviewing him, it was like,
that was fucking horrible.
That was the point where I'm like, okay, I think this is where like people are gonna start rethinking console thing. And yeah, I think we're looking pretty good in this next generation. Phil Spencer's doing a great job. I actually follow Phil on Instagram, ironically, and
dude, he's awesome. Like Microsoft went from like literally just in this generation alone, from the lead up to the launch of the Xbox One to now, they went from being like the most anti-consumer, like bullshit, like DRM up your ass, like bullshit, like TV, all that bullshit, to now being, personally, in terms of like some of the things that they're doing, I think they're doing certain things way better than PlayStation. Like Xbox Game Pass is significantly better than PlayStation Now. Fucking backwards compatibility is, well, non-existent on PS4 basically, whereas there's hundreds of Xbox 360 and Xbox regular Xbox games you can play on your Xbox One.
Yeah, so we'll be
all this other stuff. Like they've been doing awesome shit.
I know, right? I think everything's now civil, and I think everyone's at the point now where they can finally have the mentality to realize, wow, I have an Xbox. He has a PlayStation. Wow, we're gamers. Yeah. Damn, that's cool. It's not, man. He's got the Xbox. He's got PlayStation. Like, who does he think he is? Why does he not have an Xbox One? Just that stupid mentality dies in this generation. So I'm pretty stoked. And,
hopefully.
I think definitely looking at a generation that's going to change everything, and I'm sure, like I said, a PlayStation Now, probably when the PS5 launches, you're going to see PS1 and 2 games on PlayStation Now. I think
PlayStation Now is in dire need of a big overhaul, and I think they're just waiting for PS5 to figure that out.
That's what I think, because like literally, I mean, I haven't played it for 4 years until I got on Halloween last year, ironically, and Yeah, I gotta say, like it transitioned fully, and I think when PS5 happens, it's going to go through another transition that's much needed. And
Hopefully.
it seems like we're gonna have, besides the PS1 and 2 and more games of every console, you're gonna be able to download any game you want from PlayStation Now and play it. So
Hopefully.
I know right now it's only locked to PS4, but I'm sure it's gonna go.
You can download the PS2 games too.
Oh, the
on PlayStation
PS2
Now.
games are actually downloadable. Okay,
Yeah,
I know. At
it's
one
just the
point they were
PS3
only
games you can't. Which, granted, the PS3 games is like a majority of the catalog, but
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I usually just stream the PS2 games, so I didn't know I could even download them now. So yeah, it's something I learned in this podcast.
there's
yeah, I
not many
think
PS2 games anyway. It's like the GTA trilogy and a couple other things, I think. But that's
I think Star Wars Racer Revenge is on. I'm stoked that that's getting remade for Switch and PS4. So that's another good side. Yeah, I think we're looking at a lot of advances in the next generation. I'm sure we'll be able to download any console gen and play PS1 and stream like Crash Bash and crap to our console. I can't wait for that. But yeah, I'd say we're looking pretty good. I'd say we're in good shape, and I'm thinking the console war is practically dead, because if exclusives can hold a console war, that's absolutely stupid, because I don't even like a lot of exclusives. So it's just whatever. Yeah, that's how I feel about it personally. So, good times.
hell yeah. Well, with that being said, guys, let us know down in the comments if you're excited for next gen, and if you are, which console are you planning to buy first? PS5, Xbox Series X? Are you going to buy both? Are you going to buy neither? Or let us know.
Exactamundo.
Personally, I'm going to go with a PS5 first, just because I'm already in the ecosystem. I've got trophies and stuff to keep up with.
Yeah, I'm a Sony guy, so
Plus,
I'll be in the PS5.
I mean, even if I wasn't, I mean, I'm the Sony jabroni, so that I really didn't even need to answer the question. But
is that even a question for the Sony jabroni, man?
But
He'll
also
rock on the Xbox through a table.
But like also, I need Spider-Man 2 as soon as it comes out, so it's not an option for me. I need the PS5 first. I need Spider-Man 2. Inject it right into my veins. I'm ready. I was born
You're ready
ready.
to take all those screenshots and clog
Oh
up
my
your
god.
memory.
Literally,
Godly.
that's going to be like half my solid state drive is going to be Spider-Man 2 screenshots. But with that being said, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this special quarantine edition of the HPJP Show, where we bring random topics of discussion for your amusement. But until next time, have a phenomenal day.